What is up, everybody? My name is Logan Strong, and welcome to CTF Strong Talks Football. Today, I'm going to be going over every NFL team and explaining what their biggest problem is this season. I wanted to do a ranking before, like of the quarterbacks or the running backs, but I've been getting really frustrated watching football lately just because of the increase of sloppy football being played. And it's been like an all-year thing, so I just wanted something to rant about just for a short amount of time, and I just thought this would be the cleanest way to do it. So before we get started here, don't forget to comment, like, subscribe, turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any of my videos whenever I post. Well, that out of the way, let's get started. So before we get started here, I wanted to take a second to apologize for not making an NFL Red Zone reactions this week. I usually make it every Sunday morning, every week. For the last 2 weeks, I've been a part of YouTube, and I just skipped this week just because I've been really busy today. And I feel bad for not posting one this week just because there's been a lot of good football this week. Well, close games, I should say. But I have been putting them on my Instagram and TikTok, and I've been posting them on my YouTube as well. But if you want to see any of my other content when it comes to social media, all my social links are on my description on my channel. Again, I am sorry for not posting it, but with all that out of the way, let's get started for real. So the first team we've got here is the Arizona Cardinals, and there's a couple problems, but the main one I would say is consistency on offense. One week they'll come out looking like a really good football team, and the other, their offense just does not show up to play. But other than that, the Cardinals have been a pretty decent football team this year. They look electric, and they've been pretty fun to watch. So other than that small problem, I think they've been pretty good this year. Next team we've got is the Atlanta Falcons, and I would say their biggest issue right now is their consistency on defense. And it's mostly them underperforming too, because if you look at the Falcons defense, they've got Matt Judon, they've got AJ Terrell, they've got Justin Simmons and Jesse Bates, the best safety combo in the league. Their defense has allowed an average of 20 points per game, and they have allowed a total of 204 points so far this season. With how stacked that defense is, that is not a good look, and I don't know if it's a defensive coordinator issue, but that's just not good to see, especially with the star players they have on that defense. Just like the Cardinals, though, they have been pretty good this year. That's just been the biggest issue. There's a couple, but that's their biggest one. Next team we've got is the Baltimore Ravens, and their biggest issue is also defense. But it's not like the Falcons, where the Falcons' defense has been inconsistent. They still have skill, but the Ravens' defense has sucked ass this year. Especially coming off a year where the Ravens have had historically one of the best defenses they've ever had last year. But this year, they've been terrible. Their secondary is a joke, and they've allowed 24 points a game this season, an average of 24. That's abysmal. Especially for John Harbaugh. He's been known for having a great defense every year, and then for them to allow an average of 24 points a game is unacceptable. That's one of their biggest issues, especially the fact that their offense has been fantastic. It's been really good this year. Derrick Henry's been explosive. Lamar's having another MVP-like year. But their defense has been awful. If their defense keeps playing like they have been in the regular season in the playoffs, they're not going to make it. So yeah, I think that's their biggest issue right now. I would acknowledge the fact that Justin Tucker's been really bad this year. It's been sad. I love Justin Tucker. But obviously, their defense has been terrible, so that's been their biggest issue. Next team we've got is the Buffalo Bills, and there's not really much issues with this team because it's been really good this year. But if I had to pick one, I would say the receivers staying healthy. They've had so many wide receivers this year getting injured in and out, especially Amari Cooper, and the fact that he just came to the Bills and he's already been hurt 2 games. And also having Keon Coleman hurt doesn't really help things either, so they've had to stick with a bunch of backup receivers other than Curtis Samuel and Shakir. So I would say the biggest issue right now has been keeping their receivers healthy. But other than that, they've had a great year as well. Next team we've got is the Carolina Panthers, and this team has a lot of issues, but if I had to pick one big one, I would say their offense. I know it's pretty obvious, but if you watch a Panthers game, like sometimes the obvious stuff is the right answer. Like, their offense is awful. Both of their quarterbacks stink. Bryce Young in his second year hasn't been good. Andy Dalton has been good for a couple weeks, and then after that, he's been shit. And then despite Chuba Hubbard being a shockingly good running back this year, like, that's all they've got. The receivers haven't done anything. Xavier Legette as a rookie hasn't done anything. And then Adam Thielen's been hurt the whole year. Like, their offense has been a huge mess. Their O-line's been awful as well. So yeah, again, sometimes the most obvious answers aren't the most interesting ones, but sometimes the most obvious answers are the right answers. Next team we've got is the Chicago Bears, and the biggest issue for them, in my opinion, is coaching. I mean, I can easily say offense or their O-line here because they have both been terrible this year, but I think it goes down to the roots, and their roots has been their coaching. Their offensive play calling is awful. I think Matt Eberflus is a terrible head coach, and I think his style of coaching is horrible. And it's been like a common theme for the Bears, too. Ever since I've watched football when I was a little kid, I don't think I've ever seen the Bears have a good head coach, and it shows. It really affects Caleb Williams, too, because they put so many expectations on him during the draft and during Hard Knocks. If you watch Hard Knocks, you will see how many times they put so much pressure on him to be the best. And that's good, especially when you're drafted this high. But if you're giving him expectations like, oh, if you got to win us all these games, and even though it's your first year, like, they're just setting him up for failure, just like I was talking about with Anthony Richardson. And I'm afraid if they keep doing this to him and he keeps struggling like he has, he's going to get benched as quick as Anthony Richardson has, maybe as quicker. So, yeah, I think their biggest issue right now is their coach, and as long as they have him, they are going to struggle. Next, we got the Cincinnati Bengals, and I think their biggest issue is their ability to finish games. There's been so many games the Bengals have played this season where they've been one score away to winning the game, and they keep failing. Especially with the roster they have, they should definitely be a winning team right now. Like, it's been pretty tough to watch the Bengals when they're losing, just because I like the Bengals enough. They're a likable team, and I want them to succeed. But they just got to find a way to finish these games, because if they keep playing the way they have been, they're not going to make the playoffs, because their ability to win games has just not been enough. Next, we got the Cleveland Browns, and again, this is another team that's had a lot of flaws, but their biggest issue, in my opinion, is their offensive line. I know their line is extremely injured this year, and I get that it's tough, but at the same time, they have allowed so many sacks, and Nick Chubb has not been able to get anything going. Their O-line is like almost an instant to get through. Like, every single time they play a team, Jameis or whoever they have at quarterback back there, who even knows at this point, will immediately get sacked. Like, there's no protection there at all. And it's also frustrating with Nick Chubb because he just came back. I know it might be just because he just came back from an ACL tear, but he hasn't been able to get anything going. Like, he hasn't had much room to run. So, yeah, there's a lot of problems with this team right now because they've been really bad, but I think one of their biggest issues, it's pretty easy to tell, is their O-line. Next team we've got is the Dallas Cowboys, and this is another team with a lot of flaws, but this is their biggest issue by far, and it's been their biggest issue for years now, and it's ownership. Mentally and literally, like, every single time the Cowboys have a bunch of flaws, have things they need to fix that are very obvious, especially this year. Players are seeing it. They've been saying that they need to fix it, but it's usually been the owner that has been so delusional. And obviously, I'm talking about Jerry Jones. Every single time their team gets blown out at home, especially at home. They used to be a team that used to never lose at home, and now they're winless at home. But every single time they get blown out, Jerry Jones has always been asked questions, and instead of giving pretty decent answers, he's been slandering them for even asking. Like, one time he went on a podcast, a Cowboys podcast, and the podcasters were asking him questions about the team. He was threatening to get them fired just from asking a simple question. Like, where's your professionalism, especially as an NFL owner for arguably the most popular team in the league? And another thing that pisses me off about Jerry Jones is whenever the Cowboys are lacking spark on their team, they just need that spark to get their team going on either offense or defense. He hasn't done shit to fix it. Either it's in free agency, either it's in trades, or either it's in the draft. He hasn't done anything to increase their team. He hasn't done anything to make their team better. I'm starting to think Jerry Jones gets worse and worse as the years go on. Jerry Jones has been an absolute joke for the last 5 years, and I think that's the Cowboys' biggest issue right now. Next team we've got is the Denver Broncos, and I think their biggest issue right now is special teams. I'll get their offense a pass just because it's been developing and Bo Nix has gotten a lot better as the weeks go on. But one thing I can't let go is how bad their special teams have been this year. Especially this week. Like, spoiler alert, they played the Chiefs and they had a game-winning field goal on the line here. They had the game right at their grasp. But their O-line for their special teams gave up a freaking blocked field goal. Like, they were awful. Like, they didn't even know what they were doing. So the Chiefs blocked the field goal and they won the game off of that. Like, I know that's just one example, but that's been a main one that's been driving me nuts this year. But it's been adding on to how horrible their special teams have been this year. So I think that's their biggest issue right now. Next team we've got is the Detroit Lions, and I think their biggest issue right now is their division. They are literally in the toughest division this year. Like, they have to play the Packers, Vikings, and Bears twice this season. Like, and they've been really good. I don't know. That's all I've got. The Lions have been arguably the best team in the league this year, so it's been kind of hard to find a flaw other than a little bit of consistency issues. But other than that, I think the Lions have been a perfect team almost this year. Next team we've got is the Green Bay Packers, and their biggest issue right now is consistency. And it's all over the board, too. Their Packers offense has been really good. Like, we've been seeing that they've had a really strong rushing attack and passing attack, but it's also very inconsistent. Jordan Love has been really inconsistent. Like, either one game he'll look really good, and in other games he looks really bad. Same with their defense. Like, they've been showing they have a strong defense as well, but some games they look good, and then some games they look horrible. Like, they're a really good, likable team. I want to see them succeed. So, their biggest issue has been consistency, and I hope it gets fixed. Next team we've got is the Houston Texans, and they're a very good team, but there are a lot of flaws with this team. But I think their biggest one is their offensive line. It's been absolutely terrible this year, and they've allowed second most sacks in the league, tied at second with 31 sacks. That is abysmal. It's just even more surprising with how bad their offensive line is of how good Joe Mixon has been this year when healthy. He's been a very good running back. And CJ Stroud's been really disappointing this year, but at the same time, it's not fully his fault because the offensive line cannot give him any protection. So yeah, their offensive line's been abysmal this year, and that's been their biggest issue. Next team we've got is the Indianapolis Colts, and their biggest issue right now is their quarterback situation. I mean, it's just a mess right now. They have Anthony Richardson, who's in only his second year in his career, and he's been benched after 7 weeks in the NFL. I know Anthony Richardson has really struggled this year, but if you're going to bench him this early in his career after not getting that many chances, especially last year being hurt, you're setting up this dude for failure. Especially with the amount of expectations they put on him. First of all, they reached for a quarterback in that draft, and they reached on a quarterback that wasn't even predicted to make it that high. And then they were giving him these really high expectations for no reason. They weren't even seen to be a really good team. And he got injured right away, and then the season after, which is now, he's been horrible. And I get it. If he's doing bad, then make a change. But this change is not going to help him with the future of his career and his team. And Joe Flacco hasn't even been that good the last couple weeks, especially this week. He's been awful. So yeah, the Colts quarterback situation right now is a mess, and if it wasn't as bad as it is, I feel like the Colts will be a lot better of a team this year because they do have talent. Next team we've got is the Jacksonville Jaguars, and their biggest issue right now is coaching. It's arguably the worst coaching situation in the NFL right now. Doug Peterson's been a terrible head coach, and their offensive coordinator's also been terrible. And it's mostly been setting up their offense for failure too. They have a lot of potential, but it's been awful. And it's mostly because of their offensive coordinating. It's been bad play calling, and it's also a little bit of Trevor Lawrence. He's been pretty bad this year, but it's mostly play calling. And Doug Peterson's clock management has also been awful. His decision-making has been awful. So yeah, that's been their biggest flaw this year is coaching. Next team we've got is the Kansas City Chiefs, and their biggest issue right now is playing down to competition. It's every single goddamn week. Every single time they play a team, they always play down to competition. I can't tell if this is an actual issue with the team or if it's a strategy where they look pretty bad the first quarter or two. They make the other team feel like they're going to win. And then when the second half comes around, they just start ranking up the points and giving them no hope. If it's something that they're doing on purpose, then good for them because it's working. But if it's something that's an issue, they need to get it fixed because even though I've been jinxing myself the last couple years, it's just the truth with most teams. If they don't fix something like this, it's not going to work out in the Super Bowl. But watch, they're still going to fucking make the Super Bowl. I already know it. Next team we've got is the Las Vegas Raiders, and this team is also really flawed, but I think their biggest issue has also been coaching. Especially with how much expectations was put on the coaching this year from Antonio Pierce, just because he took the Raiders out of a pretty bad situation last year with firing their head coach from last year, and he was pretty good. And then this year, so far, he hasn't been good at all. He's been pretty bad. And especially with his professionalism outside the locker room in interviews. He's doing stupid stuff on social media. he's not saying the things he should be saying about the team. Like, he hasn't been that good. And if this continues to be an issue, the Raiders are going to fire a coach again, and it's just going to put him in a worse situation. So, yeah, I think that's the Raiders' biggest issue right now, and it shows. Next team we've got is the LA Chargers, and their biggest issue right now is their consistency on offense. Same thing with a lot of teams. It's been pretty good when it's been at their best, but also it's been very inconsistent. And it's mostly been their offensive line and receivers. Like, Justin Herbert's been pretty good, and their running game's been pretty good when healthy. But whenever receivers are not performing up to expectations, same with O-line, the offense struggles. It's hard to bash their defense because it's been pretty damn good this year, but it's mostly been their offense, so I think that's been their biggest issue. Other than that, they've been pretty good this year. Next team we've got is the Los Angeles Rams, and their biggest issue right now is injuries. They got a lot of players back, like Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp from injury, but I'm talking about keeping players healthy. Like, they've been pretty bad with it the last couple of years. As long as the Rams keep their players healthy, they're going to be in a good situation, but they've had a lot of struggles with it, so I think that's why it's been their biggest issue. Next team we've got is the Miami Dolphins, and this might be one of the only ones where I give two issues because they're the two easily biggest ones. And those two are keeping Tua safe and also defense. Tua has had so many concussions, especially from this year. Like, it's starting to question his career status. Like, who knows how much longer he'll last in his career, especially with this, like, him being this young. Like, it's starting to become a little dangerous, and I can't believe they got graded so high with keeping players healthy because they've been awful the last few years. And I also wanted to note defense because their defense has been awful this year. Even when the offense is actually playing good for once this year, like, their defense has been abysmal. If I had to give an honorable mention, I would say Mike McDaniel because I think he also sucks. But yeah, the Dolphins are a very flawed team, but I think those two big reasons are the reason why they've been struggling so much. Next team we've got is the Minnesota Vikings, and their biggest issue right now is finishing games. The last few weeks, they have really started to show their flaws, and one of their biggest flaws is their ability to finish games like it always has been. Especially against bad teams, like whenever they have a huge lead, they struggle to keep that lead. Like, the team always seems to come back against the Vikings, and I don't know what it is. It's been like this for years now, but it's always going to be an issue until they fix it. So that's been their biggest issue right now. Next team we've got is the New England Patriots, and their biggest issue right now, other than coaching, is their O-line. This season, the Patriots O-line has almost averaged 6 sacks a game this season. Like, that's awful. And that's one of the biggest reasons why Drake May has been getting sacked so many times this year. Like, he's been very good so far this year when he's played. He's shown sparks of very good quarterback play, but their O-line hasn't given him much opportunities to develop bigger plays. There's a lot of issues with the Patriots right now. Another big notable one is coaching, but I addressed that before, so I'm just going to say their O-line just because I haven't really addressed that one. Next team we've got is the New Orleans Saints, and one of their biggest issues right now is their ability to own up to mistakes. Like, there has been so much that has gone wrong this year. Defense hasn't been able to tackle. They've allowed a bunch of points. Derek Carr hasn't been what he's lived up to be when we got him last year. Dennis Allen was an awful coach, and thank God we got rid of him. But still, we haven't been able to own up to our mistakes. And just like the Cowboys, the Saints always try to pretend to be something that they aren't. They always try to pretend there's nothing wrong with their team and they're a contender, which they're obviously not. Like, I hope this is starting to become the beginning of rebuilding and starting to rebuild to, start a new team to hopefully contend again. But so far, it's not looking good. Our future's looking really bad. Like, we have so much money over the cap space. Like, our future's not looking bright at all. So, yeah, I think our biggest issue right now is our ability to own up to our mistakes. It's shown for the last 4 years. Next team we've got is the New York Giants, and their biggest issue right now is Daniel Jones. I mean, this is a pretty obvious one just because of how bad he's been on the field, but at the same time, he has costed the Giants so much money. Like, the Giants paid him so much money after 2022, finally having an average year. And then after he got paid so much, he's been terrible, and he's also gotten hurt. And it's gotten bad to the point, if he gets hurt any point this season, he's going to cost the Giants $40 million. That's a lot of money. Right now, as the moment I am making this video, the Giants are holding the #1 overall spot in the draft for next year. So I hope they use this opportunity to get a good quarterback out of the draft and get rid of Daniel Jones because he's so mediocre. Like, they pay so much money for Daniel Jones to be mediocre. So yeah, I think Daniel Jones has by far been their biggest issue. Next team we've got is the New York Jets, and this one's kind of tough because if you look at them stat-wise, they're pretty good. They're a good team, but I really do think this team is haunted. This team has been forever haunted to become a good team. Like, they have all the tools. Like, Aaron Rodgers is still a decent quarterback, even though he's washed. Breece Hall's a good running back. They have good receivers. Their O-line might be bad, but they still have a good offense. Their defense is supposed to be good, even though they don't have a head coach that's known defense anymore. But still, they should still be a decent team, but I just believe this team is haunted, so I can't really give a good answer. All I can say is that this team is haunted. Next team we got is the Philadelphia Eagles, and I think their biggest issue right now is Nick Sirianni. Not even as a coach, but also as a person. He's just such a big asshole. As a coach, he's a horrible coach. He doesn't know how to run a team. His clock management is terrible, and his decision-making is terrible. But the Eagles have such a good roster that they're still a good team. And whenever the Eagles win, even when it's a close game, and even when Nick Sirianni almost causes the Eagles to lose a game with his decision-making, he'll be a complete asshole and talk shit to any fan he sees in his eyesight, even his own fans. That's the crazy part. So yeah, he's just a complete prick, and I think the Eagles will be better off without him, especially with how bad of a coach he's been this year. Next team we got is the Pittsburgh Steelers, and I think their biggest issue right now is making sure their offense keeps the gas going. That's their only weakness right now. Their offense is good, but it's not that good. You know what I mean? They definitely have a lot of talent. Najee Harris has been good this year. George Pickens been really good this year. And finally, Mike Williams is on a team that he can, spark on. And also, Russell Wilson's having a comeback season, so far. He's been pretty good, but it's also, their weak point to their team still. Because if you look at the rest of the team, their defense has been the best in the league, and their special teams are also phenomenal. So it's really a compliment just because of how good the Steelers have been this year. So if they just keep it up, the Steelers are going to be a really good threat to the AFC. Next team we got is the San Francisco 49ers, and there could be a lot of things. It can be consistency on defense, their consistency on offense. Injuries is also a big one, always. And also play calling has been a big issue. But if I had to say anything, I'm going to give it to special teams. Their special teams this year have been one of the worst special team units I think I've ever seen in my life. It's actually laughable how terrible this special teams unit is. They fumble the ball so many times, and they cause so many turnovers. And that includes Jake Moody. He's been terrible this year. He's been terrible his whole career, especially with how high he got drafted in the second round of that draft last year. And him being from Michigan, him being one of the best college kickers of all time, you think him being that highly drafted, he was going to be one of the best kickers in the league. But even in domes, this guy is absolutely terrible. He's so inconsistent, and you have to pray whenever he kicks a field goal. So yeah, I think that's the Niners' biggest issue this year, and if you watch Niner games, you will see it, that the special teams unit for the Niners this year is shit. Next team we got is the Seattle Seahawks, and their biggest issue right now is consistency. This is the prime example when it comes to a team being inconsistent, because you'll either get a team that knows how to fight in a game and looks really good on offense and defense, or you'll get a team that just doesn't know how to fight at all. And it's mostly because of Geno Smith. Geno Smith has been one of the most inconsistent quarterbacks this year. He's been good, better than last year in my opinion, but he's also been really inconsistent. One game he'll throw for a bunch of passing yards and he'll have 3 touchdowns, and then another game he'll throw for around 100 passing yards and throw 3 picks. So yeah, I think that's one of their biggest issues right now, and it shows. Next team we got is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and their biggest issue right now is injuries. And it sucks too, just because they do have a very talented team, it's shown. Baker Mayfield's been really good this year, even though he's been a little inconsistent the last couple weeks. And their defense has been really good, but it's been mostly offense with injuries. Chris Godwin's out for the year, and Mike Evans has a pretty bad hamstring injury. He's expected to be out until week 12. And the last couple weeks that they played, without those two, it showed that they've missed them dearly. Cade Otton's been a really good tight end, and Sterling Shepard's been pretty underrated this year. But without Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, their offense is missing that spark they've been having forever. I'll give credit to their running back room as well. Rashad White and Bucky Irving have been pretty good this year, but their passing attack has also always been their strong suit. So without Mike Evans and Chris Godwin there, it's been pretty hard for their offense to roll. So I think that's been their biggest issue so far this year. Next team we've got is the Tennessee Titans, and I think their biggest issue right now is Will Levis. Like, when is he going to start to perform? Because that's, like, been one of their biggest things holding them back. Like, they have a lot of talent on both sides of the ball. Like, on offense, you got Tony Pollard, you got Calvin Ridley, and you have a solid tight end. Their O-line might be pretty bad, but they still hold up for what they are. But Will Levis has been causing the Titans' offense to struggle, especially with how good their defense is. Their defense has been really good this year, but their offense has continued to struggle this year, and it's so frustrating to watch. That's one of the reasons why DeAndre Hopkins left, just because of how bad their offense has been able to perform. So that's like their biggest reason why DeAndre Hopkins went to the Chiefs, and I think that's been one of their biggest issues right now. And the last team we've got is the Washington Commanders, and their biggest issue is their ability to score in the red zone. The Commanders have been shockingly a very good team this year on offense and defense, but whenever the Commanders are in red zone, they have struggled immensely to score. I don't know if it's just the pressure Jaden Daniels has just because it's his rookie season. That's like another reason why they've been so impressive this year. But as a whole, like, the Commanders have always struggled to score in the red zone this year. It's kind of frustrating too, just because if the Commanders don't make this huge splash play, they're most likely not going to score a touchdown. It's most likely going to be a field goal. So if they don't get that fixed, they're going to struggle in the playoffs. And I want to see them make it far just because a team like this never does that good. So I just want to see them succeed. So that's been their biggest issue this year. And that was me giving you every team's biggest issue this year. I'm sorry if there's a lot of those that repeated just because there's been a lot of teams that have similar issues. So it's been kind of hard to keep them all different. But if you guys enjoyed this video, don't forget to leave comments in the comment section on what you think your favorite team's biggest issue is right now. So with all that said, don't forget to comment, like, subscribe, turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any of my videos whenever I post. I'm Logan Sharon. I'll see you next time.